Hey everybody, today's tips and tricks are going to revolve around questions that we get asked all the time. One, how do we eliminate bulk? And two, how do we make points match? First of all, I want to let you know I don't have a magic solution, but I'm going to give you some hints and tips that will probably help you along the way. When we did our videotaping last week for Road to California, somebody said, how do you eliminate the bulk at the tip of our flying geese? Well, you can't eliminate it completely, but you can downplay it. One of the things is if you're making your flying geese and you're pressing them the way we normally press them, when you go to stitch them one to the next, what I do is across that joining seam, I actually go ahead and press that seam open. It helps to distribute bulk a little bit better. But I also will, on occasion, take my flying geese, and when I'm doing the actual construction, I press those seams open. So I press the first seam open, and when I did this one and do my stitching and cut, I'll press those seams open as well, so that both of the seams that come to the point are pressed open. It does help to downplay bulk if those seams are open. So that's one of the suggestions. And one of the other questions that we had that came up was with diamonds in the sky. And this actually has 12 points coming together. Now, this is made with the corner beam. Normally, when I do the corner beam, what I do is recommend that you press the seams away from the point. That helps to eliminate the bulk. But of course, one of the benefits of Studio 180 Design's corner beam is that you're trimming it. That's another thing, is to make sure that the point is trimmed properly so that you have a better chance of matching it. But what I do when I have so many of these coming together in my project at a center point is on this project, actually press those seams open. Yes, it's different. Yes, we may have said in the instructions to press the seams like we normally would, but pressing them open really gave me a fighting chance of making that seam intersection. And when I go to put those together, take that opportunity to press those seams open as well. That's going to help eliminate some of the bulk. You're still going to have some, but it helps for sure. So let me get rid of that, and let's talk about seams that we tend to make more often, which are nesting seams. This is a 4-patch. I did strip piecing, did my stitching, pressed toward the blue, rotating these around and putting them together. Now you have two options when you go to stitch these. You can either stitch on this side or you can stitch on this side. If I stitch on this side, I'm actually stitching into the seam. That's my number one choice. That's what tends to lock those seams together and make them match here. If I turn this around and stitch where the seam is coming toward me, you'll find that the working mechanism of the machine tends to separate that match point a little bit more. So if you have the option, stitch into the seam. You don't always have the option, but if you do it that way. One of the next things that we do, I got an extra plate there, pay attention to our pressing directions. We try to make sure that whether it's a simple 4-patch or whether it's our Lemoyne Star, we try to make sure to have you press so that when you line them up for the next round of stitching, you are going to be stitching into those seams to give you the match. And you would, whether you're stitching on this side, you're going to be stitching into a seam, or whether you're stitching on this side, you're stitching into that seam, forcing those seam intersections. So pay attention to the directions that you're given if you have some. Now, easy way to get rid of bulk, get rid of the dog ears. You know, I wish I could get rid of this the stuff around my middle as easily as I get rid of the excess there. Anytime you can, eliminate the dog ears. Use good quality fine pins. Yep, I've got these nice big pins. They're good for basting. They're good for my design wall. They're horrible when it comes to trying to position pieces with points. So Clover makes some good ones. Bowen makes some good ones. Get some fine pins in your process. And one of the other things that you're going to want to try to do, let me move these guys out of the way a little bit. When you're putting pieces together, sometimes you have a natural match point. And that's easy to take a pin and stick through there. But if I'm adding this to a piece that doesn't really have a match point, take a second and use your magic wand, use a friction pen, and mark your match point. That way, when you go to position these with your pin, let me put my glasses on so I can actually see what I'm doing. When I go to position these, and these are much darker than I would normally, I know that those seams are going to match when I go to do the stitching. So knowing and marking those match points will also help you to get points where you want them. Occasionally, it's really important for you to make all your points match. I've got a complex seam here where I've got two seams, 3 pieces, 2 seams, 3 pieces, and I really want that to match well in the middle. So what I'll often do is run a practice stitch. Set my machine on basting, run about 1 inch before and 1 inch past where I think the match point is, and if it matches well, come back, set your machine back to regular, and stitch right over top. Now, I did that mine with black thread so you could see it. I would do this with matching thread and then just stitch right over top so I don't have to remove it. But basting, practicing the match point will help a lot. One of the other things that you may have seen or heard about is a positioning pin, or what they call a hang pin. And that's where you take a pin and you pin through the top, through your match points, and you get them lined up. But instead of anchoring that pin into place, which tends to shift your pieces, you leave it hanging. You leave it going straight up and down, and you place a pin, one in front and one behind, to hold it into place and remove the positioning pin. And that's one of those tricks that helps you to get the seams lined up and matched. And if you don't like doing 2 pins, there are these fork pins out there. They look like this. They are a U-shaped pin. So once you put in your hang pin or your positioning pin, you can simply use a fork pin to put on either side. I don't tend to use that very often, but it is out there and it may be just the ticket for you. There's also a product on the market that is called, it's a precision piecing product, seam aligned glue. And I actually do like this. To make it work, it's got a nice fine tip on it. I would put in a positioning pin through my marks so that I know I've got what I want. And then, oops, let me put that pin back into position right there. Separate, add a little dab of the glue, and come back and put that together. And generally what I'll do is I'll do a bunch of these and let them dry and then come back. But I like doing this glue method, especially, let me put that back on there. Oh, another time, I guess. I like to do that especially when I've got multiple points along longer seams to put together. This is one that I glued last night. You can see that it's holding without any pins. It's going to allow me to go ahead and do my stitching and hopefully get all those points to match where I want them to match. Now, probably the method that I use more than the others is what I call a peak method. So I do pin, I mark my positions, mark my pieces that need to match, go through the pin, and again, remember, don't mark them this dark, just lightly so you can see what's going to match. And I'm going to go through here to my match point on the other side and loosely line up the edges, get the pin straight, and loosely anchor that pin. And then once I've done that, do a little show and tell here of how I create this. I'll take my pieces that I'm trying to match and put them under the needle. And when I get about, maybe 1 inch or so away from the match point, remove the positioning pin, get that out of the way, put my seam ripper in its place, and peek to see how well that's going to match when I hit that match point. If it's not exactly right, I might make some small adjustments, forward or backward, or in or out. But putting that there, when I see that it's going to match well, use my seam ripper to hold it right up underneath. Oh, I've got to see folding over. I don't want that because that's going to create bulk. And work my way down through the end of the project. And when I do that, and take a quick look, that's not quite right. But you know what? It's easy to try it again. With that being a basting stitch on there, I might take that out and redo it. But you know what? If every one of your points isn't perfect, prioritize how much effort you're going to put into these things. If you're doing something for a master quilter certification and you want every point perfect, well, then I'm going to take that out and redo it. But if it doesn't match perfectly, but it's pretty darn close, and the quilt's going to go on a college dorm room bed, let it go. So here's my biggest tips. Plan ahead, plan your pressing, plan your positioning, practice, and be patient and prioritize. How much effort are those points actually worth? So those are my hints and tips for eliminating bulk, for putting points where you want to have your points. And I hope some of them are going to help. And hey, don't forget to keep asking those questions so that we can get them answered in a future tips and tricks. Take care, everybody. I'll see you in a couple weeks.